What up, dog? Good morning and welcome to another episode of AIM Opinionated. It's your man. I go by a plethora of names, monikers, and one appellation. I am your host, Negus the God. We're gonna get right to it this morning and get straight into my first opinion. Today I'm gonna be talking about, or this morning I'm gonna be talking about the fact that there's really nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new that's going on in the United States. There's nothing new that's going on in Missouri. It's just kind of being dusted off and represented to a new day and age. So what we're experiencing right now, regardless of kind of what area of human activity we talking about, we're not talking about nothing new. And so that's pretty much what I'm gonna go into this morning. Briefly. So again, the things that I say when I'm gonna go into it briefly, it just means that I'm liable to do a larger episode on a Wednesday version. And this will be one of the topics that me and my panel get into on one of the primetime notoriously opinionated. So that's what I mean when I say I'm gonna get into it briefly. This is a snippet, it's kind of like how some of y'all ain't gonna know what the hell I'm talking about. But back in the day when they had cassette tapes, right? When they had cassette tapes, they would put out snippets. It would be like one song, and it would have snippets of a few of the other songs on the tape to get you to listen to it. So it's like, all right, if you like this song, check this out. We're gonna give you these snippets of all the rest of these songs, and then it makes you want to buy the album. Well, that's kind of what I do with AM Opinionated. AM Opinionated is giving you snippets of things that you may not know, just to pique your interest and whet your appetite to where you would want to hear the longer, more extended versions on either the primetime episode of Notoriously Opinionated on Wednesdays at 8:30 tomorrow night, or on Areas of Human Activity on Spotify. So you can check me out on Spotify, Areas of Human Activity, and every Wednesday at 8:30. We got some good guests tomorrow night. I'm real excited. And we got some good topics. We got some good topics that's more specific to Kansas City, Missouri, but topics that range, across the nation. So all right. So that's what we got going on there. So, all right, my first opinion for this morning is about Nate Robinson. No, I'm playing. I'm really not gonna go in on Buddy every day just because it has. I mean, he's an irrelevant part of my life. You know what I'm saying? Like it just pissed me off that he got knocked out like that. You know what I'm saying? That just upset my soul. I was just pissed off that I got caught up in the trap of the fact that he would take off on somebody during the NBA game, like the NBA game was a boxing ring, and then he tried to get in the real boxing ring and got slept. So I guess that just pissed me off. So I just wanted to go in on him, but I'm done with Nate Robinson. I got more important stuff to talk about. So my first opinion, so the way that I research, when I research something, I cross-reference it and I do a lot of stuff, and oftentimes that gets me in a whole lot of trouble. Here's what I mean by that gets me in a whole lot of trouble, because I'm interested in so many different things. When I start cross-referencing something, I'll start right here, and then I'll start researching, and that'll take me over here, and then I'm like, ooh, that was interesting. What did that mean? And next thing you know, I spent an hour and a half, 2 hours on something that was peripherally related to what I was supposed to be researching, but I went off on a whole nother tip. So here's why I say all that. So what I came across during some of my studies was that okay, so I've spoken about the Confederacy before. on, I don't know if it was AM Opinionated or Notoriously Opinionated, but I've spoken about the Confederacy before. I've spoken about how they had this lost cause, you know, how Trump is also dealing with his version of the lost cause, right? But it came across to me, which kind of said, which will segue into my main topic about how it wasn't until really the 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 New Age protests around George Floyd and Mike Brown and Breonna Taylor, all these, you know what I'm saying, all these protests all of a sudden woke up legislators. You know, it woke up the House, it woke up the Senate, you know, as if you didn't see black people getting brutalized by law enforcement all these years, as if you didn't see the remnants of the Confederacy all over the nation. You know what I'm saying? Not just in the South, in the North too. You know, you can come, I don't know if they consider Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma the North or the South, even though Missouri was racist as hell back then, you know, and Kansas was actually a free state. Missouri was a slave state. That pisses me off to have to admit that, but that is the reality of the situation. But there were landmarks and monuments that are just now being taken down. Like Mississippi was holding on for dear life. Mississippi was holding on for dear life for they precious stars and bars flag of the Confederacy. You know, they was holding on for dear life for the last little remnants that they could fly proudly over state capitals, you know what I'm saying, and still represent white supremacy and still represent the Confederacy and still represent the racist symbols of the past, right? So, and the South got a whole different history than everybody else. You know, the South's history and their history books, they are portrayed as heroes. You know, they are portrayed as the true patriots of this nation, right? Now, it's comical to me how any of these bastards could claim any sort of heroism, you know, in this nation. And I'm going clear back to the founding fathers, you know, like from the perspective of the English, they was criminals and traitors, you know, but from the perspective of Americans, they were patriots and heroes, you know. From the perspective of the North, who really was just pissed off because the South was making more money because they had free slave labor. That's the only reason. That's the only reason the North was upset. You know, from the perspective of the North, the South is some, you know, traitors because they seceded from the nation. You know, so you had 7. The original Stars and Bars had only 7 stars on it because of the 7 states that seceded from the Union, right? And then the rest of these states start coming on and went from like 7 to 9 to 11 and then ended up at 13, which is where you ended up with the 13 stars on the Confederate flag that waves so proudly with white supremacists. And again, I say, if you don't understand racism and white supremacy, what it is and how it functions, everything you think you understand will only confuse you. And here's my final example of what I mean by that. So one of my favorite TV shows when I was a kid was the Dukes of Hazzard. You know what I'm saying? Because I was a kid, I didn't understand what all the symbols of the Dukes of Hazzard really meant. All I knew was I thought that the General Lee, which I didn't know the General Lee was a who. I'm thinking it was just the name of the car. I don't know why they named the car the General Lee, right? All I know is that the General Lee, in my opinion, was the fastest car on the face of the earth, right? And that's all I wanted, was a racetrack so I could put my little General Lee car on it, right? I am so ashamed. like I am so ashamed of my childhood ignorance You dig what I'm saying? Like I I remember like that was my show. It came on every Friday. That was my show. The Dukes of Hazzard was my show. Freaking Night Rider, anything with a fast car was my show. Night Rider, not understanding what the term Night Rider meant. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know that the term Night Rider was a racist term. You know, I didn't know who the Night Riders were and what the Night Riders did. You know, I didn't know that law enforcement talking about protecting and serving. I didn't know that. So as a child, you know, I didn't understand all of these racist symbols that was on the Dukes of Hazzard. I didn't know who the Dukes of Hazzard was. I didn't know about the General Lee. I didn't know about the Confederate flag. I didn't know about Night Riders, you know, and that was just how they would integrate racist symbols into society, you know, and that's how they got kids. They put it in the TV shows. If you make something that was inherently racist into something that kids love and adore, what do kids love and adore? Fast cars, Hot Wheels. You know, that's what we dug. That's what we was into. We didn't know it was racist. You know, we were completely oblivious to the racist undertones of the Dukes of Hazzard and Knight Rider and all that. We was completely oblivious in the to the fact that these Confederate flags waving in every state was a knock against us. We was completely oblivious to all that. You know, we didn't know who the hell Jefferson Davis was. We didn't know who the hell General Lee was, you know. But now that we know better. But now you got Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats that's all up in arms talking about, oh, we need to get rid of all this. Bitch, you should have got rid of this years ago, decades ago. We ain't trying to hear that shit now. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it wasn't for the protests that's going on right now, Nancy Pelosi, Democrats, Republicans, none of y'all would give a damn about taking down none of these racist symbols. You wouldn't give a damn about taking down symbols in what, California. They still got statues of Columbus in they government buildings. They still got statues of Christopher Columbus in their government buildings. You know, that is ridiculous to me. In California, it's a place called, well, it was called the Nigger Bar, right? Now, it wasn't a real bar. You wasn't gonna get drinks, nothing like that. It was like a park, right? It was near Sacramento, near some Folsom Lake or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But it's called Nigger Park, or it was called Nigger Park. They renamed it to Negro Park. Like, that makes a damn bit of difference. I mean, no damn difference that you rename Nigger Park to Negro Park. Still a bunch of coons that's down there that didn't have a problem with it being called Nigger Park for decades. You know what I'm saying? It's been called that since the 19th century. For those of you that's not that intelligent, the 19th century was the 1800s. You know what I'm saying? So it's been like that since the 1800s, because you had black miners that was down there mining and struck gold down there in that area. And so they kind of gave that area to the black people and named it Nigger Park. And they changed it to Negro Park, and that was supposed to make a difference. So, all right. Well, that kind of was Human Past, but I'm gonna hit today in Human Past real quick. So, whoa, today in Human Past was the birth of, he's like a cult classic in the joint. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't tell me that you was in a joint, and especially in Missouri, Kansas, and you didn't read a book by this guy. You know, if you tell me you was in the joint and you never read a Donald Goins book, you must have been being chased your whole bit and didn't have a moment's peace. You know what I'm saying? Because most everybody picked up most everybody picked up a book by Donald Goins. He was one of the great urban writers. You know what I'm saying? And needless to say, you know, he was locked up in Michigan. You know, you can read the writing, and I guess you wouldn't know this unless you'd been incarcerated also. But you know, when you can tell somebody's writing who has been incarcerated, you know what I'm saying, a lot of times, because a lot of times they write what they know. And so all he knew was well, he read Pimpin' because they said he read a lot of Iceberg Slim when he was locked up, right? So he, you know, that's what he got into. He got into a lot of Iceberg Slim. He got into and then kind of wrote about what he knew. But the man wrote so many books, you know what I'm saying? Now, the one that I believe he's most famous for is Horson, right? And like I said, that's the one that's like the cult classic in the joint is Horson. But yeah, shout out to Donald Goins. Happy Earth Day. And that is what was going on today in human past. All right. So this topic is about to be briefer than I actually anticipated, but I've already kind of touched on it. You know, there's nothing new under the sun. So the fact that there have been marches against racism, against police brutality, against inequality, against the inequality of the wealth gap in America. None of this is new. None of this is new. This goes back to and even a bit before Reconstruction. You know, one of the first like largely black, or really mainly black, protests was like in 1917 up in New York, you know, and I was like, they're fighting for not civil. They was fighting for black rights, not civil. You know, civil rights era had probably some of the largest marches, you know, during the civil rights era of the 60s and 70s. You know, that was during the civil rights era, you know. But just think if there was camera phones back then, you know, and everybody like now who has a camera or who has a phone with a camera on it, just think if it was, because you could see some of the footage of things that was going on from people that just had, you know, these humongous, you know, cameras, you know, that was taking footage. There was news footage a lot of times. But just think if people back then would have had handheld cameras, you know, handheld phones with cameras on them, you know, just how much footage we would have of the same types of footage we have today, if not worse. You're talking about a worse period of time. So to think that marches and protests began with George Floyd, they didn't. Began with Mike Brown, they didn't. Began with Trayvon Martin, they didn't. It's been things happening Trayvon Martin-esque, Mike Brown-esque, George Floyd-esque for centuries. Undocumented. We just didn't have nobody with a phone that was able to record it, you know. But just think of how many more things we would have to outrageous, you know, how many more things that we would have to talk to our legislators like Nancy Pelosi about, you know, how many more things we would have to talk to the president of the United States about, you know, about needing to bridge that wealth gap, bridge that gap of inequality, you know, bring some truth to the promises during the Reconstruction era. There were promises that were made, you know. And it's like Dr. King said, the late ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., just be real to what you said on paper. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say be real. You know, just uphold what you said on paper. You know, you said on paper that all men shall be treated equal. All men are equal. Just be real to what you said on paper, but you're not. You never will be. For the same reason why you try to hold on in Mississippi, to the same reason you try to keep all these racist statues and all the racist propaganda around the nation, because you don't want to give up, and you never will give up your white supremacy, right? Support Black and small businesses. Keep the dollar in the Black community longer than 6 hours. You know, we need that Black dollar. We got $1 trillion worth, and it doesn't stay in our communities. Why? It doesn't make any sense. Let's keep the money in the Black community. Let's try to do what we can do to bridge that wealth gap. You know, I've been your man, Negus the God. This has been AM Opinionated. Tune in tomorrow for another episode of AM Opinionated, as well as tomorrow evening for the primetime version of Notoriously Opinionated, where my guests will be my co-host, Negus Kafaru, aka the Hero. Also on the panel, we will have my guy again, you know, my business partner, Johnny Waller, as well as you know what? I'm gonna keep that last one a secret, but you're definitely gonna want to tune into this one. You know, we're gonna get into some real heavy things in regards to Kansas City. You know, we're trying to do things to help out the community. So until then, peace. I'm out.